Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's your man Soul here. Welcome back to the channel. If you clicked on it, you know what it is. We are doing my first reaction video actually on the best tank in Wrath of the Lich King Classic, a tier list and rankings provided by Mr. Toyhouze himself. If you don't know who Toyhouze is and you made it to my channel, well, first and foremost, let me thank the algorithm gods. Secondly, you need to go check his channel out. I'm subscribed to him and I have been for a while, and I really do enjoy the content he puts out. I do learn a lot from it, and now that I'm getting the traction up on my channel, I want to maybe try to pay it forward. I guess this is a way try to pay it forward, because I guess for everyone who sees this video can go to his channel and check it out. But yeah, try to pay it forward and show my respects and just give my take on what he thinks are the tier list for the tanks. Toyhouze, if this does make it to your eyes, anything I say is all out of respect. We're gonna have a difference of opinion. I'm really impassioned about tanking and wild shit, so it might seem like aggression. I promise you it's not. That's just how I speak. I'm a New Yorker. What it is what it is. Like, that's how I talk. But without further ado, let's jump in. Let's get it popping. Let's go full screen this bad boy.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Wrath of the Lich King, the last true Blizzard game ever created, and what many consider the best WoW expansion of all time. And we're going to be comparing the best tank class in this video. We're going to be considering things like AoE threat generation, single target threat, the health pool, physical damage reduction, as well as magical damage mitigation. And we're going to go...
First thing first, I want to say is that's a lot of contributing factors to the best and worst tank. Some of those things are pretty baseline, like single target threat, AoE threat, yeah, cool. But health pool, I don't know if that really does that really sway what's the best and worst tank. Like, historically, like in retail, Brewmaster monks have had a low effective health pool, but they've been the better or the best tanks at points. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's kind of weird, but I mean, whatever. It's his video. I'm just watching.
Class by class, discussing the strengths, weaknesses, new abilities, new talents, and at the end we're going to rank them. Also, I want to add that we're going to be looking at patch 3.3.5a, the last patch of Wrath of the Lich King, since that's the patch we will likely get in a Wrath of the Lich King Classic release. But before we dive in, I want to talk very quickly about Blizzard's Wrath of the Lich King design philosophy for tanks to set the proper context. So what Blizzard wanted was for all four tank classes to be viable. They wanted to achieve as much parity as they possibly could among the four tanks without making them feel too similar. If every single guild wanted the same class as their main tank, then Blizzard would have considered that a failure.
So I think they actually succeeded with that, like with the motto of bringing the player, not the class. Because in Wrath, you really don't see, pardon me, you don't see a lot of class stacking, like, or mandatory classes like in Wrath. Like in vanilla, like the warrior was the de facto best tank because it was the only one that had good defensives and a taunt, like, you know what I mean, like, and it scaled really well with gear, so you needed a warrior. Like, you couldn't just have like a 40 man, you couldn't do AQ 40 with a druid and a paladin. Like, you needed a warrior tank. It was, or things were gonna go left. Kind of like in TBC, you need, like, you don't need, but it would behoove you to have 4 to 5 shamans because of the way heroism and totems work. Now they changed those things, and it drastically will cut into shamans. You're about to find out. It will drastically cut into the utility of a shaman, but you kind of like can't push as hard as you can, or have a harder time pushing without those shamans with you. Some fights you can't even do altogether, or it just makes it so, it makes it feel like it's so impossible. Like Archimon, like if you don't have any shamans, that fear is really gonna mess with your group. Like, it really will mess with you. You're gonna have a whole bunch of just extra damage from Doomfire. So I think Blizzard succeeded. Like, there's not really one class that you need to have. I would say maybe arguably Demo Lock with Demonic Pact, but you can take whatever you want. Even if you don't have Demonic Pact, you're gonna rock through shit. So
what they really wanted to achieve was tanking flavors, as you might put it, and want to be very careful when they implemented this, because they didn't want certain tanks to only be used for certain encounters. For example, if druids had gigantic health pools but lower mitigation and avoidance than a warrior, that would be tanking flavor. It would mean that you heal the bears a little bit different. They might drain more mana, but the damage would be more predictable. In really long fights, the warrior might have an advantage over the bear tank. In a fight where a boss hit very quickly for less damage. The warrior with armor would have an advantage there over other tanks. In fights with periods of high burst damage, the druid might have an advantage with that large health pool. In magic fights where armor was less of a factor, then once again that druid with lower armor might have an advantage. Now this is just one example. Blizzard's overriding concern was making sure that the tanks have the tools, the threat generation, and damage mitigation that they needed to tank, and their secondary concern being making sure that the tanks don't feel too similar. Now, with that context provided, let's talk a little bit about the Protection Paladin. Now, many people believe that Ardent Defender, which is a talent that Protection Paladins get, is the most overpowered passive ability in the history of pretty much World of Warcraft and Wrath of the Lich King. Now,
all right, so let's talk a little bit. First, let's look at some of these factors. So I guess this is all the things that he said: AoE, single target health pool. So this looks like 10 dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10. So basically on a scale from 1 to 10, he's ranking these things. So he has AoE threat at 10 out of 10, single target threat 8 out of 10, health pool 8 out of 10, physical damage reduction 10 out of 10, sorry, and magic DR 9 out of 10. So he's basically giving these guys, what is this, 10 out of a total of 50. He's giving them 10, 20, 28, 36, 45 out of 50. Yeah, 45 out of 50. So I mean, it's no secret that the Paladin is the S tier tank, the best tank of Wrath of the Lich King. I think he was a little generous in some of these things. Now they do have a high health pool, they do have decent single target threat. See, AoE threat. So in my opinion, almost every single tank, if it's 3 targets or less, performs the same. Maybe Death Knight. Death Knight has a little bit harder time with 3 consecutive targets. Just a little bit. But when it's 3 targets or less, almost every tank is gonna be able to do this. Like, you wouldn't be able to really tell the difference between threat generation across 3 targets. Some people consider 3 targets AoE. Kinda is, but I mean, I guess he puts 10 out of 10 for AoE threat because regardless of the situation, they're just using Consecrate in Hammer of the Righteous. So, and those abilities are just really strong. So I guess yeah. All right, you know what? Let me let them rock. Let me let them cook for a minute.
Ardent Defender does is it is a passive that says damage that takes you below 35% health is reduced by 20%. In addition, attacks which would otherwise kill you cause you to be healed by up to 30% of your maximum health amount healed based on defense. This healing effect cannot occur more than once every 2 minutes. So it is a effect that is passively always on you. If you were to die, you would not die and instead be healed for 1/3 of your maximum health, and that's incredible because you still have that 20% reduced damage if you're below 35% health.
Nah, Ardent Defender really is broken. It really is a strong talent. Like, the fact that it's even a talent. Like, it's like, that's not a, I don't think there's ever a situation where you're that deep in the prot tree and you don't take Ardent Defender. Like, that should have just been, I guess they couldn't have made a baseline because then all Paladins would have it, and that would be crazy in PvP. So they had to make it prot. Like, they didn't do, that was before they did, when you spec'd into something, you got different abilities. So I guess they had to make it prot. But yeah, it is incredibly strong.
So this passive alone, which can happen more than once if it, 2-minute internal cooldown, it's incredible. Many people think this alone made Paladins one of the best tanks, but we're going to talk about more than just this. But this passive, just want to get it out right front and center, makes Paladins very strong. Now, Protection Paladins also have some nice support abilities for the entire raid, like Divine Sacrifice, 30% of all damage taken by party members within 30 yards redirected to the Paladin to a maximum of 40% of the Paladin's health. It will not kill the Paladin. They also have Lay on Hands, they have Hand of Protection, etc., all the blessings. Paladins also have the advantage of damage over time in the form of Consecration and Seal of Vengeance. They also have excellent threat generation from Avenger's Shield, which is instant cast in Wrath of the Lich King. Now, Consecration, of course, being the great AoE threat generator.
So I just want to say this. For those who are looking at this and scoffing because maybe they just don't like paladins. One thing you got to understand is even if you don't like something, that doesn't change its effectiveness, and paladin just happens to be extremely, extremely effective. Like, I don't know if he's going to touch on this, but the reason why physical damage reduction and magic damage reduction are so high is, especially, I mean, physical is because they have high health pool and they have high armor because they're shield tanks, right? But if you don't know, paladins have, like, just from talents alone and glyphs, like a 15% DR active at all times. They get like 6% from Improved Righteous Fury. They get 3% from the Shield of the Templar talent. They get 3% from the Glyph of Divine Plea, which you are always going to have up because of the Guardian of the Light talent. They get 3% from Blessing of Sanctuary. They just have so many DRs, and they have Devotion Aura, and Improved Devotion Aura is actually a really good talent to take. So they're just really, really, really tanky. It's really hard to kill a paladin on top of the fact that they have a cheat death. So that's why he's giving paladin so much shine, and they are like coming out 45 out of the 50 total possible points. Just wanted to say that. Like, paladin's not my favorite tank, but I can't ignore the effectiveness of a tank. And with Divine Sacrifice, commonly known as Raid Sack, you can sway a raid fight just by yourself if you're a paladin. Like, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
For paladins with unlimited targets, as long as a mob is standing in the consecration, they will take damage. There's no maximum number of mobs that will be taking that damage. Avenger's Shield, of course, we talked about. This is going to scale with your holy power and attack power, affecting up to 3 total targets that will daze them and jumps around. A big talent for protection paladins is Spiritual Attunement. This is a passive ability that gives the paladin mana when healed by other friendly target spells. The amount of mana gain is equal to 10% of the amount healed. That really helps with mana issues.
All right, so I don't think he's going to go into like the talent trees here, probably in other videos he has. So he's right, Spiritual Attunement now is a talent. It's not passive anymore like it is in TBC, but it's only 10% if you max it out. It's and then generally you don't max out Spiritual Attunement. It's a 2 talent point talent, so generally you only take 1 out of 2. So it's 5% mana return, not 10. But yeah, it's still good, still there.
But a new spell was added in Wrath of the Lich King called Divine Plea.
Yep.
You gain 25% of your total mana over 15 seconds. Your healing is reduced by 50% during this duration, with a 1-minute cooldown. So clearly this is a very nice protection paladin spell, because you're not really casting heals on yourself while you're tanking.
No more popping those Mad Alchemy potions or Super Mana potions.
25% of your mana can be used in a desperation situation where you need that mana back. Very, very awesome addition to further help with Protection Paladin mana issues. Now, another ability was added to Protection Paladins called Shield of Righteousness. Slam the target with your shield, causing holy damage based on block value plus an additional 520. This is excellent to help with single target threat generation, which Paladins I think would definitely appreciate. It's a nice addition. And they also have Hammer of the Righteous. Hammer the current target and up to 2 additional nearby targets, causing 4 times your main hand damage per second as holy damage. This is an incredible new ability at the bottom of the protection tree, which helps once again with multiple targets. I actually meant
to pause that. So one thing I want to say about the Paladin, the reason why their single target threat is as high as it is, because you might not think that. Listen to what he just said. Shield of the Righteous and Hammer of the Righteous both are abilities that do pure holy damage, which means they're always bypassing armor, which means they're always just doing so much damage. It's crazy. It's crazy. And the fact that Consecrate is uncapped, Paladins are just like stupid. Like people always think like, oh, Death Knight. No, Paladins are really, really, really just broken. They have so much going for them. It's out of control, actually. It really is.
There was a period of Wrath of the Lich King where Protection Paladin was incredibly overpowered in Arena. Just as an aside, I remember one-shotting many warriors in Arena as a Protection Paladin, but I'm going to keep this to tanking. It was good times back then. Now, there's actually a revamped Seal of Command ability that tanks sometimes use. So Seal of Command, when used with attacks or abilities that strike a single target, additional holy damage will strike up to 2 additional targets. So that is if you have
Like
Seal of
needed.
Command on, so it's slightly different. Now able to hit multiple targets. Now, of course, Paladin tanks do have another advantage over other tanks with the ability to use Holy Wrath and Exorcism to pick up demon and undead mobs, which is a nice benefit. Paladins are also the only tanking class to use mana while actively tanking, and that can be a vulnerability if they are mana burned aggressively. Only Paladins use spells when tanking, and all spells are from the Holy School of Magic, so silence and interrupt effects mainly will hurt Paladin tanks. Hand of Reckoning is a new single target taunt. It taunts the target to attack you. If the target is not currently attacking you, it will also cause holy damage. Also, as a plate-wearing tank, they have very good physical damage reduction. Overall, an extremely powerful tank that many would argue is the best tank in the game, in part due to the revamped Ardent Defender talent.
I think one thing they could have done to bring Paladins down a notch is maybe... One way you could have done it is probably make them wear mail instead of a plate. You don't want to completely neuter the class, right? Pardon me, but you can't be the tankiest tank, the best AoE tank, the next best single target tank, have the most cooldowns and the most raid utility. Like, that's too much. Like, that's a lot. That's really a lot on one class. Like, so I think they should have scaled back some of maybe the passive DR that they get. Because, like, having 15% damage reduction at all times, plus a cheat death, plus I can go immune, plus I can just instantly heal myself, plus I can make the raid take 20% reduced damage. It's just a lot. Like, that's just so much packed into one class. I think they could have scaled it back by making them wear mail, or maybe not giving them Divine Sacrifice. That should have been in the Holy Tree. That should have been in Deep Holy. Like, Divine Sacrifice is I don't know if that should have been proc, but that's just my opinions with the Paladins. Other than that, I think it's a really good class. I mostly agree with these scalings here. Yeah, go Toyhouze. I'm with this. I'm with all this.
Okay, let's move on to the Protection Warrior.
Oof.
Now, many Protection Warriors will tell you that this is the most fun tank class to play. Warbringer, which is a talent, causes your charge, intercept, and intervene abilities to be usable in any stance. In addition, intervene will remove all movement impairing effects on use. So this gives you the ability to bounce around wherever you're needed, pretty much better than any other tank.
Yep,
They've got great mobility, and of course, if you are knocked back, it allows you to quickly return to that mob that knocked you back, or go somewhere else. Warriors also finally have an answer for AoE threat building, which is the new talent at the end of the protection tree called Shockwave.
So let's stop right there real quick. So let's look at some of these markers he got. So he's given the warrior, the prot warrior, let's look at the total here. We got 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. So 18 minus 50, 30. So he's giving them a 32 out of 50 for their tanking score, right? Way down from 45 out of 50 from the paladin tree, right? So it's hard because warrior is widely considered to be the worst of the worst, and like, don't take a warrior, and like, people are already saying, like, if you're a prot warrior, you're griefing us, because why would you be a prot warrior when you can be a paladin or a death knight or even a druid? So it's like, on one hand, I don't like to be too hard. I don't like to be too harsh on anything, especially in Wrath, where they're literally wanting you to bring something because of the person wanting to play it, not because of this thing can do this for me. So it's hard for me. But then when you see things like this, like, you know, like the warrior, the single target threat could be better. The AoE threat definitely could be better. I think honestly he was a little bit more generous with the AoE threat. I don't think they get 6 out of 10 on AoE. I think they get like a 5.5, 5 out of 10, to be honest. Like, yeah, I don't, because yes, they have Shockwave, yes, they have Cleave, yes, they have Thunderclap. All of those things really, outside of Shockwave, because Shockwave is actually pretty strong and it's a stun. But all of those things are like not the same as like a Consecrator or Death and Decay. You know what I mean? Like, let's use Death and Decay. Like, Death and Decay is an uncapped AoE ability that does hide threat, right? Death and Decay kind of does what all 3 of those abilities do, right? So it's like you need 3 abilities to maintain AoE threat. I don't know if that's a 6 out of 10 worthy for me. Like I said, that's 4 to 5 for me. But yeah, that's just me.
This is a cone ability that you cast in front of you. It stuns all enemy targets within 10 yards for 4 seconds, and of course would generate threat there. Very nice ability, very useful. Of course, you do have to line things up right, and it's sort of a linear cone in front of you. The 20-second cooldown, of course, it's not as accessible as, say, a Paladin's 9-second cooldown Consecrate, but still something that can hit and stun all enemy targets, which is what Warriors desperately needed. Also, Warriors have a great ranged aggro building ability, which can be used to pull, called Heroic Throw. 1 minute cooldown, throws your weapon at the enemy, causing high threat. Vigilance is a great threat management and protective talent for Warriors to use. It essentially reduces damage taken by a target by 3% and transfers 10% of any threat they cause to you.
Let me stop right there, because I have an issue with Vigilance. On paper, it's a good talent, right? It's really good for your off tank, reducing their damage taken by 3% and transferring their threat to you. If a tank needs a pseudo MD, like a passive misdirect or a passive tricks of the trade, because that's basically what Vigilance is, there's something wrong with their threat generation, in my opinion. If I need to take 10% of your threat generation and give it to me, that means there's got to be something, maybe not wrong, but there's something flawed about my own threat generation. And giving the talent, they might as well just increase the actual threat abilities. Like, you know what I mean? Instead of taking 10% of threat from somebody else, just increase my threat generation or my damage of my abilities. That's why I have a problem with Vigilance. It's a good talent on paper, but in practicality or in when you're in execution, I feel like the threat generation should have just been given to the warrior rather than this roundabout way to give it to them. I don't know. It's just me.
Anytime that target is hit by an attack, your taunt is the taunt refreshes cooldown. This lasts 30 minutes. Can only be on one target at a time. This is very powerful. So a skilled warrior can use this to have close to no cooldown on taunt. So very, very powerful, actually. Of course, warriors also bring the staples of Demoralizing Shout and Thunderclap to reduce melee attack power, as well as increase time between attacks, respectively. Warriors have an AoE taunt ability called Challenging Shout, which actually has a 3-minute cooldown in Wrath of the Lich King, which also once again helps with AoE threat generation. Only warriors have the ability to reflect spells with Spell Reflect, and also as a plate-wearing tank, they have great physical damage reduction. Warrior tanks are also known for their very powerful defensive cooldowns, Last Stand, Shield Wall, Shield Block, which increases your block chance by 100%, which is incredible.
So since we're nearing the end of this warrior portion, I wonder what made him think that warriors, like, why did he give warriors 8 out of 10 but give paladins 10 out of 10 for physical? Yes, they do have all those passive DRs, and that does account to physical damage reduction, but warrior is, I would have given him a 9 at least for critical block, because warriors, like, they can effectively double their block amount. Like warriors really don't, I don't know, that's weird, because yes, paladins have their passive DR, but every tank has some sort of passive DR. Like, druids get protector of the pack in their talents, 12% DR. Death Knights have frost presence, which is just a flat 8%, furthered by some talents. Warriors have defensive stance, which I believe is 20%, 20% DR. So I don't know why he gave warriors 8 out of 10, but he gave paladins 10 out of 10. That doesn't make sense to me, especially when warriors can critically block, like, and they have shield block, which increases, like, it makes them block all the time. Like, I don't know, that's weird. I would have, if you're gonna give warrior paladins 10 out of 10 in physical damage, I would have given at least warriors 9 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10. That was a weird thing to me. Magic damage reduction, I guess 6 out of 10 is not bad. I guess for high magic damage, they do have Last Stand, they do have Spell Reflect, they do have things that can help. Shield Wall is going to be Shield Wall, and you can reduce it to 2 minutes. So Shield Wall still like one of the best, if not the best, defensives in the game. Like, so I guess 7 out of 10 maybe here, and 8 definitely. There's an argument for 10 out of 10 here. I don't know why he did that, but I'm cool with 6 out of 10 on MDR. Physical DR, I don't know. That was just weird to me.
cooldowns: Last Stand, Shield Wall, Shield Block, which increases your block chance by 100%, which is incredible. And that is the Warrior. Let's move on to the Blood Death Knight.
All right, I'm just gonna say it like this, Toyhouze. If you do my Death Knights dirty, I'm gonna have to come at your neck, boy. Like, don't play with me. Don't. And I already see something I don't like. All right, Toyhouze. All right, Toyhouze. You know what? I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna put my feelings to the side, and we're gonna figure this out. Here we go.
Now, Death Knights operate off of runic power, which is very similar to Rage. It sort of decays over time, but as runic power is lost, the Death Knight's other resource, runes, are restored. Death Knights are known for having large health pools and especially strong anti-magic abilities and passives, and this is sort of their distinctive flavor. One such is Spell Deflection. It's a talent which gives you a chance equal to your parry chance of taking 45% less damage from a direct damage spell. So this is passive. This is always happening. It's almost like you are parrying a spell. Very, very cool and very, very strong anti-magic damage reduction. Another ability that all Death Knights have is called Anti-Magic Shell. It surrounds the Death Knight in Anti-Magic Shell, absorbing 75% of the damage dealt by harmful spells, up to a max of 50% of the Death Knight's health, and preventing application of harmful magical effects. This is incredible, and by the way, any damage absorbed energizes the Death Knight with additional runic power. Only lasts 5 seconds, but it only has a 45-second cooldown, and it is an incredibly powerful magic damage reduction ability. Now, another strong passive, which is actually shockingly similar to Paladin's Ardent Defender, is called Will of the Necropolis.
Poor man's
Damage
Ardent
that would
Defender.
take you below 35% health, or taken while you are at 35% health, is reduced by 15%. Of course, not as powerful as Ardent Defender, but it has a little bit of that when you're low health, get additional damage reduction flavor. Very, very nice passive ability. Now, Death Knights also have Army of the Dead, which is surprisingly a defensive cooldown. Summons a legion of ghouls to fight for you.
All right, we reached a little bit on the halfway point through the Death Knights. Let me just stop him right here. All right, so AoE threat, I think he was generous with. I don't know if Death Knights are 10 out of 10 AoE. Definitely at least 8, at the very least 8. I don't know if I give them 10 out of 10 because it requires some setup to be consistent with your AoE. Like, for instance, if you don't have like Morbidity or Glyph of Death and Decay, your AoE threat or the consistency of it is going to vary pull to pull, because Death and Decay is a 30-second cooldown, right? Taking Morbidity reduces that to a 15-second, and taking Glyph of Death and Decay increases the damage by 20%. Those two items are going to definitely make you feel much more of a sufficient AoE tank. But if you don't have those, if you opt out of taking those things, your AoE threat, your threat isn't going to go down, I guess, but it could by virtue of you not having access to D&D as often. So I don't know if Death Knights just always get 10 out of 10. That's number one. Number two, they definitely get 10 out of 10 single target threat. I don't know why he gave them a 7 out of 10. Death Knights are the best single target tanks for threat, by far. Icy Touch in Frost Presence is just too strong. It's incredibly broken. There is nothing that's going to pull off of you if you do this setup on a single target boss, right? Let's say you're about to pull an Ixia. You burn your 2 Frost runes on Icy Touch. You blood tap. You burn that Death rune on Icy Touch. You empower rune weapon. You burn 2 more Icy Touches. The dragon is on you forever until the end of time. There is nothing else that's going to pull off you or even come close. Maybe another Death Knight doing the same exact rotation, who might be a little bit quicker, might pull off of you. But that is it. So single target threat because of Icy Touch is just too strong. He should have gave that 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Health pool, that 9 out of 10 I'm cool with, because Death Knights do stack stamina when you're blood. Like, that's just it. Physical DR, 8 out of 10 I'm not mad at. Yeah, I'm not mad at that. Death Knights are plate tanks. What did he give Warriors? He gave Paladins 10 out of 10. He gave Warriors 8 out of 10. So yeah, because Death Knights can't use shields. Like, they can't use shields, so they're missing a large part, and they can't block, so they're missing a large part of their mitigation by having less armor than the shield tanks and the bears. It's not by much, but I mean, when you're comparing it to the shield tanks, but I don't think I would have gave this the same rating as the warrior. I would have maybe given the warrior, not saying that the death knight should be lower, but the warrior should have been higher. I think I already said that. The warrior definitely should have been higher for physical damage reduction. Magic, I think he was too generous. I think he was too generous with the magic damage reduction. Only because, all right, so how can I word this? Direct spell damage, right? That's what he's talking about when he's talking about spell deflection, right? So if it's direct spell damage, I'm pretty sure that only includes dragon breaths, which there are a lot of, to be fair. And I think I went over this in my my Death Knight video. There are a lot of dragon breaths you're going to be avoiding. Dragon breaths, targeted abilities like shadow bolts, and possibly tanking abilities like icy strikes from Anubarak. I don't know if this includes dots. If this does not include dots, if a dot application isn't considered direct, then you can't reduce it, and that to me reduces the effectiveness of the magic damage reduction. Now that gets shored up by Anti-Magic Shell. He's right about that, especially if like in his artwork you're a Blood Elf Death Knight, because Blood Elves already get passive magic reduction from their racials. So I mean, I guess if he wants to put 10 out of 10, it's cool. I maybe would have given a 9. I think 10 was just a bit too generous. Because didn't he give Paladin 10 out of 10? No, he didn't. He gave him 9 out of 10. All right, so yeah, yeah, I think he was definitely too generous with the AoE threat, because you're not factoring in the outside tools you need to be more consistent with your AoE threat. And he definitely should have gave single target threat 10 out of 10 for DK tanks. Like, I don't know why he didn't do that. But again, just my opinion. I love Death Knight. I'm always gonna love Death Knight, so I'm always gonna have like a soft spot in it for Death Knights.
While the Death Knight is channeling, the Death Knight takes less damage equal to dodge plus parry chance. So pretty nice there. I didn't actually know about that one until I looked it up. Raise Ally is not actually a battle res. That happened in patch 4.1.0, which was actually in Cataclysm. In Wrath of the Lich King, the spell literally just raises your ally as a ghoul for 5 minutes, and it has a couple of mediocre abilities usable on a vehicle bar.
Just want to mention something. I honestly never really got the point of Raise Ally, like before it became a battle res. Like, they nerfed it so much to like the ghoul damage, so it's like it doesn't really do anything. And I guess it's a way, like, maybe if you're about to kill a boss, if a boss is at 5%, you need somebody to do something, sure. But I never really got the point of Raise Ally. I felt like they should have made it like a pseudo battle res. And what I mean by that is you raise the person, and instead of being a ghoul, they control their actual player for maybe not 5 minutes, but maybe for like 2 minutes. They control their actual player for 2 minutes at like 20% minus damage or 20% less healing, but they still can do something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, raising them as a ghoul just seems kind of silly. Like, it's a cool flavor ability, but practicality doesn't really do anything to me, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Like, maybe there's some super use for a Raise Ally that I'm just missing and that someone can educate me on, or I can just go research, but I never saw the real usefulness for it.
Bloodworms is a very cool talent for Blood Death Knights, which cause your weapon hits to have a 9% chance to cause the target to spawn 2 to 4 bloodworms. Bloodworms attack your enemies, healing you as they do damage for 20 seconds or until killed. There's also Mark of Blood. Whenever the marked enemy deals damage to a target, the target is healed for 4% of its maximum health. That's quite good as well. Blood Boil is essentially all enemies within 10 yards take shadow damage, more effective with diseases, so very, very good AoE threat generation. Rune Tap is a 1-minute cooldown ability which converts a blood rune to 10% or 20% of your max health, depending if you talent into it. So you can kind of see here a trend. There's a lot of self-healing going on with Blood Death Knights, and there's also a lot of magic damage mitigation. And this is sort of the Death Knight flavor, self-healing and very resistant to magic. And of course, they also wear plate, so they have quite good physical damage reduction as well. Overall, a very, very strong tank class with a lot of fun flavor. Of course, the new hero class Death Knight, so a lot of fun to be had there. And last but not least, we have the Feral Druid. Now, Druids have AoE Taunt, which they can combine with their Thorns buff to have very strong establishment of AoE threat. They have notoriously large health pools, as we talked early on, and they can use that to soak damage, magic damage very well, or just burst damage. And this is sort of their flavor because Druids have a naturally lower armor value than the plate-wearing classes. Now, Dire Bear form, which increases attack power by 120, and
I don't know if he's right about that. I'm not the best or the biggest Druid aficionado for tanking in Wrath, but I don't think that's right. It could be right, but I don't see how they go from being the best armor or the best physical damage tanks or the best high armor tanks in TBC to being the lowest. I don't know. Did they change something with the Dire Bear form to reduce the armor contribution effect? I guess I'd have to look that up, but I don't know if that's right. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I just don't know. That's something to, what is it? More research required.
It also increases armor contribution from cloth and leather by 370%, as well as stamina by 25%.
If it's 370, then yeah, it is right. But then again, all right, so if Dire Bear form increases your armor by 370% and thick hide is 10% and then survival of the fittest is 33%, that's still almost the same amount. Because in TBC, I think it's like 425%. So hold on, we gotta bring up the calculator. Hold up. He said 370, right? Plus 10 plus 33. All right, so it's a little lower, but I don't know. I feel like that physical damage statement, the armor value statement he said was kind of wrong. I don't know. I have to double check though. But I'm starting to lean more on the side of that information being incorrect.
Gives Druids that additional armor. Many say it's sort of equivalent to if they were wearing mail. There's also survival of the fittest.
That doesn't even sound
This will
right.
increase all attributes by 6%. In addition, it reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by melee attacks by 6%, and most importantly, increases your armor contribution from cloth and leather items in a bear form and Dire Bear form by 33%, which is a big number, actually. In addition to that, they also have thick hide, which brings up that armor contribution another 10%, so that is an additional 43%.
Literally everything I just said. I should have just let the video rock.
From talents, increasing their original leather armor value. Many argue, once again, this still leaves them short. However, Druids also have a lot of agility on their gear, which gives Druids a much higher dodge than the other tank classes, which is enhanced even more with talents like Feral Swiftness. This will increase your chance to dodge by 4%, and this combined with the passive damage mitigation of Savage Defense, which reduces the damage taken from the next physical attack that strikes you by 25% of your attack power anytime you deal a critical strike.
I actually forgot about Savage Defense. Forgot about that one.
And active ones like Bark Skin, which is essentially a 20% damage reduction, lasting 12 seconds with a 1-minute cooldown, as well as Survival Instincts, which we talked about. That's basically the equivalent of a Warrior's Last Stand, a 20% damage reduction. Druids actually have an absolutely ridiculous amount of abilities. I was losing my breath just trying to say them all. Druids have a ton in their kit, whether that's passive or active, so they really compensate for that lower armor with that large health pool, but all of those passives and
He keeps saying low armor. Maybe they did do it. I don't think, like, Toyhouze wouldn't keep saying it unless it was true. Like, I'm not saying he couldn't be misinformed, I'm not saying he's God or anything, but if you get, like, if you're gonna publish a video and it's meant to be a somewhat of a tutorial, not a tutorial, or like a guide, the information you put out is gonna be 9.5 out of 10 accurate. So he keeps saying it, so maybe it's true. Maybe I'm bugging, but I'm gonna look into it though.
active abilities. There's so many of them. Druids are truly a sponge for both damage, but also heals. They can drain their healers' mana more quickly than the other tank classes, though they do have Innervate, which can help with mana from pull to pull and long boss fights, of course, would then be more draining on healers with a Druid tank. And I do want to mention that Druids might have a harder time in Icecrown Citadel because of the dodge debuff. When you're in the raid, it decreases dodge rating by 20%, so keeping that in mind as well. Feral Druids also have a...
I mean, with the dodge thing, they kind of had something like that in Sunwell, if I'm not mistaken. It was like a dodge chance reduction or something like that. So that's nothing new. Like, if you played a druid in TBC, which a lot of druids play in TBC Classic, going into ICC, that's not going to be anything new that you never experienced.
An ability at the end of the feral tree called Berserk. This causes your Mangle to hit up to 3 targets and have no cooldown, reduces the energy cost of your cat form abilities by 50%, and you also are immune to fear. So that is a nice bonus for druids. Of course, there are even more passives I didn't talk about, such as Primal Tenacity, which also reduces the duration of fear by 30%.
PvP talent.
And reduces all damage taken while stunned by 30%. You can imagine Primal Tenacity being a very important talent for druids. If you're stunned, you can't dodge, so that 30% damage reduction being very helpful in those types of scenarios. Protector of the Pack is another powerful passive, which reduces the damage you take by 12% just passively while in bear or dire bear form. It's quite a good talent. And then, of course, we did talk about Survival Instincts, the druids, equivalent to a warrior's last stand, granting 30% of your maximum health for 20 seconds. Of course, druids also have Feral Charge to get back to targets after being knocked back. And druid off tanks also have the advantage that they can turn into cat form and help DPS the main tank's target after their target is killed. Kind of a unique ability to druid tanks. Now let's move on to the ranking. Now many will argue that Ardent Defender is simply the best passive in the history of the game, and it rounds out Paladin Tank to be the most overpowered tank in Wrath of the Lich King. I tend to agree with this.
So I agree with that, but for different reasons. I don't think it's just Ardent Defender that just makes Paladins the best. I think it's a culmination of everything they can do. I think it's Ardent Defender plus how little damage they take, plus how tanky they are, plus the threat generation they do both in single target and AoE. It's just consistent across the board. Plus they have really, really good utility. Raid Sack alone, like I said, sways fights. I think it's the combination of Ardent Defender, Raid Sack, and just their tankiness. Because it's just Ardent Defender for me isn't really like, I don't know, that doesn't really move me. It's great, don't get me wrong, it's great. Having a tank with a built-in cheat death, like that you don't have to manage, is amazing. But I don't know if that's the sole reason I would put them in S tier. You know what I mean? Like there has to be a culmination of things, you know. And I think it's the culmination of their tankiness, their utility cooldowns, and their offensive threat generation, both in single target and AoE. I think that's why it's unparalleled when you look at all of the things a Paladin can do versus the other tanks. So
the talent provides Paladins with massive damage reduction and a second life passively, which can happen more than once if it happens between the span of 2 minutes. It's just too strong in my opinion. Death Knights have many incredible passives and active damage mitigations with self-heals, and Druids also have a ton of passives and actives damage mitigation abilities as well. So I ranked Warriors as B because Warriors seem to require much more skill to be played at the level that other tanks can get just passively, just by choosing their class. Paladin, for example, has that Ardent Defender as a passive. DK takes reduced magic damage passively. Druids have a ton of powerful passives, and so on. But Warrior needs to be actively using many abilities and cooldowns to be as effective, which means you might run into more mediocre Warriors because not everyone has the skill to pull it off. Overall, though, like we said in the beginning with Blizzard's design philosophy, you should be able to have any class main tank, each with their own strengths and weaknesses and their own unique flavors. Hope you guys enjoyed this guide. I had a ton of fun learning more about Blizzard's game design philosophy for tanks and Wrath of the Lich King. If you want more videos like this, then...
Alright, okay. Alright. Good video. Let's unpack a little bit of what he said at the end here. Alright, so I agree with Paladin being S tier. I think you can't get around that. I don't think there's any Wrath of the Lich King guide or tank tier list that's not going to put Paladin in S tier. Like, you know what I mean? As far as the other tanks, so Blood I will give A tier. I like it. I'm not saying it just because it's my favorite class, but I think Death Knight definitely is the next best tank because Death Knights can do kind of like, it doesn't have the weaknesses of these things. Like, so okay, hold on, let's bring that back. So for a warrior, he has said they are missing a lot of their passivity, like their passive DRs, which I don't know if that's necessarily true. It kind of is like a warrior clearly doesn't have something like a Will of the Necropolis or an Ardent Defender. It doesn't have that. But all of these tanks have a passive DR. Like that's, I don't know if he knows like or remembers that. I'm sure he knows it, but I don't know if he's remembering that. Like being in defensive stance is a passive DR. You know, being in bear form because of Protector of the Pack and all the armor and health increases. You know, that's a passive DR. Being in Frost Presence gives you a passive DR. It's not as much maybe as what these guys have, but it's still there. That being said, though, I think that's the only shot I'm going to give the Warrior. That being said, Warriors in B tier, I think was generous. I think they could have been in C tier. Honestly, realistically, D tier. But I say C because when people see D tier, they just automatically think F tier. At least C tier, you might have a shot. Like, I think for the casual YouTuber / WoW player / I just want to know what's best and I want to be a Chad. When that D means F tier, C means niche, B means not as good as A is good, S is great. That's how I'm always going to want to be. That's what I think people see when they see tiers like this. But as far as like Warrior being in B tier, I don't know. I don't think I would have put them there. I think I would have put them in C tier because when you have to work as hard to get the same results as everybody else, then why would I pick you? He said that, you know, Warriors have to use and maintain more abilities to get the same usefulness out of the passivity that comes from the other tanks. So then why would you take a Warrior then? You see what I'm saying? Granted, again, we're living in the realm of bring the player, not the class. If the player really wants to bring a Warrior, I don't think it's going to hinder you. I don't think it's going to make you not progress, but you might be questioning yourself or questioning the actions of your fellow player on some boss fights. That's all. But I think B was a bit generous. I think A might have been a bit generous for Druid too. Druid has more utility than Warrior and DK. All right, so when it comes to utility, I don't think, like, they have Demo Shout. Every tank gets some sort of attack speed reduction. And that's really it. I can't really think of what other raid utility a Warrior has, so they don't have any. Death Knights, I don't think have any raid utility outside of if you opt into going this deep into the Unholy Tree as a blood tank, anti-magic zone. But their utility for the raid, I think, is shored up by the amount of cooldowns and amount of useful abilities they have for different scenarios. Like a Death Knight has something like, again, for Dragon Breaths and magic abilities, AMS. For raw damage abilities, they have Icebound Fortitude, like just for a flat wall ability. They have Vampiric Blood, which is a really, really good just rotational ability. So they have answers for different things. Druids have utility too. They have B-Res, they have Innervate, and they have healing abilities, and they can DPS while not tanking, but they can't use those utility abilities while main tanking, so they have to wait. And if it's my turn to tank and I taunt when it's my turn and I'm tanking as a druid and someone dies or someone's running out of mana and I can't battle res them or I can't innovate them for the next 5 to 10 seconds because I'm tanking and I'm waiting for a hit to happen to me or I'm waiting for my partner's debuff to fall off, that could wipe the raid. So the utility is there, but it's also much, much more limited than the Paladins one. So I don't think I would have put Feral in A. I would have put him in B tier because, like, let's go back really quick. So Death Knights got, let's see, it's 6. They got a 44 out of 50. Druids got 3, 6, 9, 12. They got a, wait, 3, 6, yeah. They got a 32 out of 50. But they're both A tier. That doesn't make sense to me, in my opinion. No, 32. Oh, Jesus, I'm wrong in math. 38. 38 out of 50. So 38 out of 50 and 44 out of 50. I don't know if that's not really. Those two things aren't the same, especially when you're giving. Even though I feel like you should have gave more physical damage reduction to druids too, but that's neither here nor there. Even a single target threat, they should have. I don't know. 7 out of 10 seems kind of. I would give them at least 8. AOE, I would have maybe stuck to 6. 7 is generous. Health pool's great. Magic DR, I guess they have high health pool. When you have high health, that's basically Magic DR. To be honest, that's like if you're a tank, like real talk, stamina is basically damage reduction. The more stamina you have, the less damage you're going to take because you have more health. Because if you're at 50, if your maximum health is 50k and you take a 20k hit, it's gonna feel differently. Where if your max health was 100k and you take a 20k hit, you see what I'm saying? So it's basically DR. But yeah, I would have given a little bit higher physical DR, a little bit lower AOE threat. But yeah, this tank who's 38 out of 50 and this tank who is 44 out of 50, I don't think those are the same. Those aren't the same class of tank to me, in my opinion. So I would have given Pharaoh B tier. I would have given Warrior C, Pharaoh B, Death Knight A, Paladin stays at S. My opinion. I think that's it. This was a pretty good video. Again, I like Toyhouze. I like his channel. I like his content that he puts out. And I think if you guys check it out, you will too. If this video made it to you, thank you again for joining me in this reaction. This is my first time doing a reaction, so I think it went pretty smoothly. I don't think I was too annoying and pausing every single moment that I wanted to talk about, and I think I kind of got my point across pretty quickly. But yeah, I think this was a good endeavor. And if you liked it, please hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content just like this. Toyhouze, again, if this makes it to you, I'm just really impassioned about WoW and especially Death Knight. So if you think I was a little too harsh, or you like if we're gonna we can disagree, we don't gotta agree on shit, but I just want to let you know that everything I said comes out of a place of respect. I respect you, I respect your channel, and that's all I got. You guys have been great. I've been Soul. I'm out. Peace.